This video is brought to you by Core Gun Belts, the ultimate ADC belt. Check them out at coreessentials.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. We definitely appreciate the support. So we got Jesse and Nick over here from Practically Tactical. We're going to do a couple of videos, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you guys got any comments, definitely put it in the comment section below. So the first thing that we're going to do is talk about red dots, right? So before we get into that, just let us know where you guys, your website and all that stuff, your social media stuff.
Pretty much Practically Tactical everything. So youtube.com/Practically Tactical, practicallytactical.com, Practically Tactical podcast on iTunes, Practically Tactical on Facebook, Practically Tactical on Instagram, Practac Jesse on Instagram, Practac Show on Twitter. I don't know. We could just take over and we'll mention all of our sponsors. We can just do all.
Yeah, you guys are good. So I'll put links in the description below so you guys could check that out. And we definitely appreciate you guys here coming to the show. So we're gonna talk about red dots and pistols, and we got a lot of guys out there. So if you guys want to put some comments, definitely let us know. But go ahead, Nick. What do you got to say about this?
Well, I guess the question is, we'll start off with you, sir. So you haven't shot red dots on pistols at all.
No, I actually done. I mean, I've done a ton in rifles, but never in pistols. And I really want to get into it. There's some questions that I'm probably going to ask you, like, cutting the slide and all that stuff. So maybe we could talk about those things. But yeah, no, not really.
Okay. Well, Jesse, do you want to maybe kick it off with an approach for a new shooter and why they might want a red dot? Then we can hit some points on why we think they're so amazing. And me and you have both switched to our carry guns, our main guns, to red dots.
Yeah, sure, man. Yeah, so, like Nick said, I've been running a red dot for a little over like a year and a half right now. I actually just killed my first RMR. It's at Trigicon right now, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But, starting off, so here's the thing, right? As humans, we can only focus on one plane at a time. The problem with iron sights is you have a front, excuse me, rear, and then obviously the target or the threat that is in front of you. So what we kind of do is we cheat, right? So as we come through the draw stroke, we kind of pick up the rear in our peripheral. We go to the front sight, then we check the target once back to the front sight, make sure everything's level, and then we kind of break the shot. Well, what having a red dot allows you to do is stay single and actually target focus. So now you're just keeping threat focus or keeping target focus. You're bringing the dot up to your eye line, and then you're able to break the shot. So especially in force on force and different encounters like that, you can watch the threat, right? And we're watching hands and waistbands. So that's where the threats present themselves. And you're able to see that without having to remain front sight focused. Distance, again, here's a huge benefit. A lot of guys I see, especially with new shooters, they're just not confident in their sights. They don't understand their actual sight picture. So especially when we get back to 25 yards, the sight being as wide as it is covers up the entire target. And it's really hard to become super accurate like that, right? With having the red dot on there, I mean, all the way back to 50 yards, no problem, center mass hits all day long. So there's a lot of good benefits. I think it also improves, obviously, draw stroke. It improves just confidence in your shooting ability a little bit. Obviously, the downside, a lot of people are going to talk about reliability and things like that, and I'm sure we'll get into that here in a little bit. But I tend to find most people think red dots are cheating. So I'll get to a class or something and, you'll be shooting well. And someone's like, well, of course you're shooting well. You have a red dot, right? And I'll always hand it to the new shooter and be like, here, man, then, show me how it's done. And most of the time, right off the bat, they'll be like, because they've never noticed how much wobble room they actually have, especially when you get on a dot, the 3.25 or the 6.5. You'll see it start to wobble a little bit. And that's your grip mechanics and everything, right? It's showing you the air, which you don't see because there's play within your rear and front sight window. So having that dot there, again, same with draw stroke, right? A lot of guys will say that they have trouble finding the dot and they'll be bringing the dot up, and then they'll have to search for it. And again, that just comes down to presentation, right? If you're not doing things consistently the same way, of course, you're going to get different results. But I promise you, once you start working that draw stroke and you get a proper draw stroke down, the dot's just going to show up every time. And again, guys are just more confident in it. We see that going from, obviously, you know, you talked about rifle shooting and how you're really experienced on shooting a red dot on rifles. And if you remember, man, the same thing happened, right? Like, people were all iron sights in the beginning, like especially when red dots came out. You had the reliability issues. You know, no one wanted to just throw a red dot on their gun. And now it's the staple. Like, that's all, you know, now people are starting to get into even more like variable power optics and stuff. And I see handguns going the same way, man. At classes all the time, I'm seeing more and more guns getting red dots. Obviously, you're seeing like Glock and Smith & Wesson and some of these manufacturers producing like the MOS models. You're seeing things like the Raven Baylor that allows you just to use your rear sight without actually having to go through all the work of getting it milled. But I'll say, like, you know, probably I would say within the next 5 years, man, this will be kind of the staple. It'll just be the norm and everyone will be shooting a red dot because, again, like aging eyes, just being able to, again, remain threat focused throughout. And I'll say this, like, before, you know, I kind of give it back to Nick and we'll get into some other things. But, you know, everyone will say like, well, you know, I shoot iron sights really well or blah, blah, blah. Or like, you know, what about going back to iron sights, something like that. And I'll tell you, I honestly shoot iron sights better now, having ran a red dot for this long than I did prior to, because I'm, again, more confident in my draw stroke, my grip mechanics, everything else. And the iron sights, I understand what focus I need, but I still, you know, distance is still not as easy as it is with the red dot. And that's just what it is. And, you know, when we get into up close shooting, where a lot of guys will be like, yeah, you know, I can shoot irons way faster up close. It's like, again, distance to the thread is going to present what I need to get, right? If I can just get window on me or some kind of mechanics on me, and I promise you, like with a good draw stroke, again, that dot's just going to be there and you can be accurate and fast with it. So that's what I got for like getting into a red dot. But like I said, we'll talk on like reliability and stuff. Nick, anything to add to any of this?
That's a lot of good information, man.
Well, I mean, and again, too, hey, if you don't like red dots on guns, cool. You know, we're not here to force anybody on doing it. It's more of, hey, if you're interested, try it. There's some easy ways to get into it. We did a review on the Duick Defense mount. So that's a way that you can mount a red dot without milling your slide. The Baylor that he talked about. So there's ways to help kind of cut the costs before getting in.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you that all of us run Trijicon RMRs. They just come out with their new 2.0 version that is more – the first version was never designed to be on a pistol. So you look at all the G-forces that are going on of your slide going forward and back. There was some issues in the beginning, and they've been revamping it until now they came out with a 2.0 version that has a lot more, we'll say, pistol-friendly internals on it. So that's part of it. I look at it from a different viewpoint, and this was actually a great learning experience for me. Was I think last weekend, the weekend before, Jesse, we were up helping Trek at a class, and I was on one side of the line, and then there was a student who had a hand disability, right? So he only had one full functioning hand, and he was cross-eye dominant. And I was like, dude, get a red dot. For the simple fact of, so for those that have issues with cross-eye dominance, your dot's just there. So that eliminates that issue of having to, you're right-handed and your left eye is dominant, or your left hand and your right eye is dominant.
Which that's what happened to me.
Yeah, that a red dot's going to help you an absolute ton in that situation. Also with him, so I'm carrying today my CZP07. Look at that, a hammer on a gun. Would you ever believe that? Could never believe that until now, right? So what he would have to do, so he was left-handed, and then he had hand issues, so he would have to switch back to his right hand and use his strong hand to rack the slide. Well, the beautiful thing with I'll just unload this here so I'm not flinging rounds everywhere. So the beautiful thing you can do with an RMR with this giant window is manipulate the gun in issues, loading, unloading, whatever it might be. It's this giant windowed ledge here. You can rack it off just about anything. So it gives you a lot of ability as well in regards to manipulating the gun.
Can you show us that gun pretty quick?
Yeah,
because that's pretty sexy, man. Can you talk about it for a little bit?
Sure. So this is a CZP07. I bought this from Cajun Gunworks. So they do a lot of CZ internals. So this has their Pro package. I bought this gun directly from them. This was the suppressor ready model. I actually haven't fully tacticaled it out. I haven't operated it fully yet. I actually do have a comp for the gun. It's not on here right now because none of my holsters support it. So I will have a comp on here. I want to play with comps a little bit. So I don't have any answers for anybody on comps yet. I want to actually learn it. Then I have RMR 06 on here that was milled by ATEI with top serrations as well. And then a Surefire X300UA and stippling done up by NAF Solutions. So yeah, that's this gun right here. Absolutely, it's a phenomenal freaking gun. And there's videos up on this if you guys are interested. Not with an RMR on it.
What about, because I saw the CZP07 now, which that's one of the guns that I want to buy in the future. And I saw you have those sights in the front. So do you have to like co-witness or anything like that, like you do in the rifles? No.
So this is kind of a thing that will throw people off at the beginning. Is they want to like have a co-witness, so their irons line up, and then they're like red dots right above it or something. You have to treat them independent of each other. So my dot is one siding plane, and then my irons are a separate siding plane. So you just treat them differently. Don't worry if the dot's out on top of the irons. When you're shooting the red dot, the irons, are basically meaningless. And then they'll probably come pretty close. Like they're pretty close on my CZ. I actually probably there's kind of some issues out there with CZs, the way of mounting RMRs, the way that the slide rides in the frame. That it's kind of, some people have issues with the dot being on the front sight. I'll probably shave my front sight down a little bit, but that's a whole nother issue. But you have to treat them independently of each other. So that's a big tip.
So if for some reason the dot disappear or something crazy happen or whatever, you still could use your regular sights.
Exactly.
Just like you would do in a rifle.
Yep. So now what you will want to do though is you will want to go out, turn your RMR off, and then so suppressor sights, their point of aim, point of impact is different than, for RMRs, we say, and this comes from Steve Fisher of Sentinel Concepts, is you zero at 10 yards, you adjust windage at 25. So you're basically on from about 5 yards to 100 yards of point of aim, point of impact. So that's how I do it. But your suppressor sights will be different than like your standard iron sights. So your suppressor sights are going to be a little bit higher. Where they're zeroed at might be a different distance than what we're typically used to because they're a little bit higher. So you'll want to take your irons out, turn off your RMR, find out what they're zeroed at. Maybe it's 35 yards, maybe it's 15 yards, whatever it is. Then figure that out.
Okay. What about holsters? Is there anything that, you know what I'm saying, that has to be done specifically for the new shooter out there? Do you have to get like a specific holster for it, or it doesn't really matter?
Jesse, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So, again, it's really going to come down to the holster manufacturer. We obviously are sponsored by Squared Away Customs. We actually did a collaboration with Squared Away Customs and made up the coach holster. So this is a light bearing inside the waistband holster that obviously accommodates an RMR. Also will accommodate everything from a 19 to a 17 comped gun. Everything fits through. Has the nice little Raven clip to help tuck. But, again, it's going to come down to how high the material rides into the back or the front. Most obviously, again, RMRs are kind of nothing new. Most companies are going to have some sort of option for that. It's when you get into some of the different kind of mini reflex sights that are out there, like the Delta Point Pros, I don't even know. The Vortex Venom, I believe, is one. The new Shield one or whatever. The Romeo from SIG. Those are probably going to have, a different profile or different pattern. But most major, holster manufacturers actually have an option for RMR cuts at this point. So,
I was going to make a joke and say Jesse doesn't know how to make holsters.
Right. No. That's a past life, man. That's a past life.
Does that got erased out of?
Yeah, we don't even just talk about that.
We don't even talk about
bad memories of slaving away down in the shop.
But
yeah, I would say, that gave me some inside knowledge to what goes into, again, making a good holster. And that's why we ended up going with the sponsor we did, because he just makes some of the best stuff, and he has the ability to again make it quickly at a good price point and everything. So holster compatibility is really a non-issue. You know, some of the other like big questions that I hear come up with, you know, is like you know, Nick said earlier, there's the Baylor and there's the Duick defense, and kind of going that route or an MOS route. And you know, again, what we've tend to see and going through all the classes that we've taken and things like that, is that milled slides are definitely the way to go. And who mills your slide definitely matters as well, right? So again, you're going to want like boss plates in there that hold the RMR. You want the, you know, why we again are sponsored by ATI, and why we choose them is they mill the red dot to exactly your RMR. So there's no tolerance for slop, because that's what under recoil makes that, you know, again, it's hitting slide lock. That's a ton of G forces that little reflex sight that was never designed to be on a pistol is going through. So when you have it that tight of tolerances, that allows, again, just a longer shelf life on the RMR. A lot of guys will talk about like battery flicker issues again, and that's all spacing between the plate, right? They make things called like sealing plates. You know, I've got one on mine that definitely helps make, again, moisture not be able to get underneath there, but as well as hold that battery in place, because what you'll find is some of the batteries, the plating inside the RMR and then the battery make like a different contact that corrodes, right? So especially on the Type 1s, what you would have to do is you'd have to bend the little battery contact just slightly in there, so that as the gun would recoil, it would turn that battery slightly and it would scrape that corrosion off, and that way you would never get flicker issues. You know, again, on an RMR, Type 2s have gone ahead and fixed that issue, you know, so now you have better battery contact points. But obviously there's a lot of Type 1s out there. I know some guys that'll take like the sticker off the battery. Batteries matter. You know, we found that I think it's the Duracells tend to work the best. Duracells and Sony's Energizers tend to crap out kind of early. Typically you'll get around 1 year on your battery. Usually I just change it out on my birthday. Easy way to remember. People will ask, you know, where should I get my backup iron sights? Should I get them in front of the RMR, behind the RMR? Honestly, I don't think it matters. I've shot both. I do think, you know, it's easier for me to have the original setup. I have all mine set up with the irons behind the RMR. But yeah, I don't think that's like a huge issue. I think people kind of go into that more. Same with dot size. Like, so a lot of people will be like, well, do I go with the 325 or the 6? Because honestly, I would only recommend the RMR 06 or 07 because they're adjustable, right? Mm-hmm. What I don't like about the RMR 01s and 02s, which would be the same dot size, but they're non-adjustable. They just kind of auto adjust. The problem is, especially when you get under white light, they tend to not pick up the right ambient like lighting, right? So they tend to wash out under white light use. Yeah, so I only recommend pretty much the 6 and the 7. I've heard really good things about the Delta Point Pro as well here recently. Mm-hmm. I have not had a chance to play with one. So right now, the best that we're seeing, again, is the RMR 06 or 07. Difference being one's a 325 MOA dot. The other is a 6.5. I personally have RMR 07s. It's about the width of a standard front sight post. So some people say you can pick it up at close range a little bit faster, being a larger dot. I've shot both. I've shot the 6 and the 7 pretty extensively. And, you know, I can tell a slight difference. Obviously, it's a little bit smaller on the other one, but I don't think it's enough of a difference that I would really care. I'd probably end up going, you know, to the 325s just because, again, I can shoot further back, you know, with 200. I just have a smaller target. So
now, you know, just because I just read a comment from Mateo here. Mateo said red dots on rifles are no longer the future. They are the present. So if you coming up to training, if you do a lot of training on a rifle with a red dot, would it make sense for you to have the same kind of system on a pistol? You know, so you could transfer some of those skills?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I mean, you put the dot where you want the bullet to go and pull the trigger. I mean,
it's not that difficult, you know?
No. I mean, the big things that you'll see with red dots on the biggest issue that we see, especially with new shooters coming to, coming to a class and they're shooting a red dot for the first time, is they can't find the dot. They'll present out and they can't find the dot. They can't find the dot. And really that's just a presentation issue. We'll have a video on this soon. We picked up a draw stroke from Joe Wire at Alliance Police Training. And basically, you just bring the dot up to your eye and present out after you go through a retention shooting position, and boom, I have my dot like 3 inches in front of my eye. So then I just present and push the dot where I want it to go, just like a rifle, driving that rifle where you want it to go. Same principles apply after that. So, yeah, I would say here's one of the biggest things, especially for like me and Jarhead 6 and Jesse. Not to give away our age, we're all 25-ish, but as we tend to get a little bit older, maybe for your older folks out there, eyesight becomes an issue, especially the older you get. When it starts getting darker outside, it starts getting to dusk. I can't see stuff. It's just my eyesight is just terrible. I have contacts in that are like, people. If I had glasses on, I'd look like Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys. So my eyesight's really not good. So a lot of times people say, okay, if your eyesight gets bad with a self-defense gun, you go to a laser, and that could absolutely work. A red dot is also a good option for that. The beautiful thing with the red dot over the laser is when you have a laser on your gun, generally it's sighted in at a specific distance. Before or after that, though, they're not going to line up. So like I ran a laser in one class just to get feedback. As soon as it's zeroed in for usually about 10 yards. At 25 yards, the dot was high and off to the side. So then you start questioning, is the laser on or are my sights on? So that's the beautiful thing with an RMR is, again, you sight in at 10, windage, adjust at 25. And again, 0 from 100, you're basically on. So that's the beautiful thing about even shooting at longer distance. Beyond that is you maybe have a little holdover. Not really. Again, 200 yards, you can still basically hold straight on a full IPSC and get hits all day. So that's the beautiful thing of why I like the RMRs over the lasers. Is you don't have that issue of at a distance after your 0 on the laser, your laser's not on to where your iron sights are. So, but yeah, as you get a little bit older and your sight gets bad, red dots are definitely an answer for that as well.
All right. So what about price? What are we talking about price? Because
this is the bad
Jesse,
part.
Jesse just said a lot of stuff that sound really good, but I'm sure it's gonna cost some good money. And again, to me, it's not a waste of money. It takes money to have a good system. It takes money to have a good firearm. It takes money to train. We've been talking about that. People got to save the money and pay for this stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Jesse, you want to go into costs and tell people how much we spend on our guns?
Yeah. So again, we're not saying you need this right off the bat either. So this isn't a thing like, if you can't afford it right off the bat, then, no big deal. But it's a thing that over time you're going to reach, your max potential on iron sights, or you're going to reach the max potential on your vision, whatever the case. And you might need that next step, and that's where you kind of look into the RMR. And, again, you can find them. I mean, Cabela's was blowing out the Type 1s for like $350 not long ago. So, you can find them used down to $350 all the way up to like $600 brand new somewhere in there. So, but now here's the other part, right? Because I talked about how you're going to get this set up on your gun. And again, I'm talking, if you want longevity out of your red dot, milling your slide is the only way to go. So sending it to a reputable person to mill it, it's probably going to run you, depending on the options. Obviously, if you only got an RMR cut, but most of the time guys are going to get like serrations, press check serrations or something. And that's going to run you anywhere from, $200 to $500 extra, depending on who mills it. And again, that matters as well. So, really look into the work that they're doing, because once it's milled, you can't add metal back to that, right? Once it's gone, it's gone. And you need that tight pocket. You need those tight tolerances to, again, make sure that you're getting the most out of your red dot. I'll talk a little bit about reliability, because as I said in the beginning of this, that my RMR is actually at Trijicon right now. And that's kind of the thing, right? So here's the benefit of going with Trijicon. Once you buy quality stuff, they have a lifetime warranty on their product, right? So you send it into them and they're going to replace it for you, because they understand, like, if it's getting put to use, like stuff like that breaks. So same things with aim points and things like that. Like, I've had to send them in and I've got new ones back, or they've repaired the ones that I've sent. But even good gear, if you use it hard enough and long enough, it's going to break. What are we talking about round count? So again, the longest round count I see is, again, ATI slide guns. You're talking anywhere from 10,000 to 20,000 rounds. I think mine crapped the bed at about 18,000, which is, again, that's a lot of shooting, right? Like especially for the typical person, I carried it every single day. And here's the thing, like, luckily for me, it went down in a training class. I was actually taking Will Petty's vehicle CQB during a run. I had noticed my dots start to flicker, which happens sometimes, right? Like I said, sometimes moisture can get in there depending if you're out shooting in the rain a lot. Like sometimes moisture can work its way down there a little bit. Sometimes your battery gets corroded depending on the battery brand. And usually it's as simple as a swap out of the battery and I'm back in action, no problem. Usually I'll do a quick like rough zero on it. Again, I'm talking zero, like usually want a zero to your carry ammo, and everything in between will pretty much be ballparkish. And when we talked earlier about like going from rifle to that, you're also going to work holdover, right? So holdover happens on handgun as well, and that's what I really like, is because I'm constantly knowing that offset, right? Same with rifle. It's almost the same offset for me. It's about 1.5 dots above. So anyway, going back to the reliability. So my red dot, I went back to it, got a new battery in it, fired right up, started shooting it again on the next drill, and it goes down again. But this time it's not, the dots are on, but it's all the way in the left side of the window. And, it's just, so I just immediately switched to my irons, finish out, was still, like I said, going to irons was no problem because they're right there, So I immediately noticed my dot is way off. I watched the round skip where I didn't want it to go, and then I corrected on the fly. Went to the irons, went back, and I tried to, I checked my witness marks, because that's one thing, you zero it, right? You want to make some little witness marks on there to make sure that it never self-adjusts itself or whatever. But yeah, I went to zero it back, and the dot just wouldn't move, right? It was broke, just not zeroing anymore. It just stayed all the way in the left of the window. So I sent it in. It's been gone about a week right now. They said give them about another 2 weeks, and I should have it back. So, in the meantime, obviously, I can still use the gun with iron sights, but I actually sent my frame off, so I'm borrowing Nick's Glock 17 with his RMR on there right now.
Man, I'm really glad that we're doing this, because when I was talking to Nick, and Nick was like, "Oh yeah, let's talk about this," I thought this was gonna be like a 3-minute conversation, man. I was more into they look cool and they help you shoot better, and that's it, But wow, that's a lot of stuff, man. I appreciate that. I really, really, really do.
Well,
now, what about low light situations?
Awesome point.
Yeah.
So
take it.
I'm writing notes, man. I'm actually listening, because, like I say, I want to put one on my gun. I think I like the fact that you got that red dot. You put that red dot on the target. Obviously, you got to apply the fundamentals, but I like the fact that you could probably use your eyes open. I'm left eye dominant, and I shoot right-handed, so I always have that. I'm always shooting left. So when you have this situation, what typically you could do is that you could adjust the dot to your eyes, and it kind of works better. So like that, I'm not shooting left constantly. So you know what I'm saying? That's something that I wanted to do, but I know it's expensive. I know it requires some training, but I like Mateo said, I think it's the present. And I think that's why I was disappointed on the Generation 5 Glock coming out. I thought they were going to be ready to be one of the videos that I did. I was hoping that I was ready to have RMR set up to put it on, but it is what it is. So about low lights.
All right, so I'll let Nick get into like the white light aspect of it. What I'll say for sure is, again, using it under night vision, it's like almost a necessity. I don't know how else, other than like a X400 with the laser or something like that, or like one of the Steiner products, with the laser on your pistol. But the nice part about the RMR is, dude, under nods, you can literally pop it up. You've got the green, under the green screen, you've just got a floating dot out there. And again, it's almost like cheating, it's so easy. Yeah, Nick, do you want to get into using it under like white light or actual weapon light?
Take it all, dude. Take it all.
Okay, so here's what it's going to come down to is settings, right? So again, when I said earlier, like I recommend pretty much only the 06 or the 07, and that's because they have an adjustable brightness. I don't really use that feature so much, right? What I do is I set it pretty much bright enough to that when I activate my weapon light, I've got a Surefire X300U on there. Right, I can still see my dot, or if I'm in the brightest sunlight, I can still see it. Because that's the thing. Obviously, to be able to shoot, I would need to be able to PID. To be able to PID, I would need to be able to see my target. So obviously, there's going to have to be some light, whether it's artificial from my weapon light or my handheld light, or it's going to be from the ambient light in the environment. And as we know, like where most people go every day, there's some sort of ambient light, right? So it's never too bright to where it like blares out the whole screen, but it's bright enough to where I can see it all the time. And yeah, weapon light use, dude, it's going to be the same thing. But here's the thing, especially for being able to search and assess with the actual firearm. Again, I can remain dot focused and threat focused, because it's just there. It's all on the same plane, right? I don't have to look over my front sight and get that metal on the actual meat, but look over to see what I actually need to see. I can see it straight through the sight. Yeah. So again, I think it's a non-issue. I don't, it's just about finding that right setting. What I will say is that RMR, especially for me, I carry appendix, right? So I tend to find that sometimes throughout the day, carrying stuff or rubbing against stuff or whatever, I might bump that dot setting because the minus is on the actual outside towards your body. Yeah. I don't know why they did that. I wish they had like a lockout feature, but it's just not what they do right now. So hopefully they'll listen to that in the future. But, so again, once in a while, especially, if I'm changing from light to day or whatever, just once in a while, you'll have to give it a check, but it's really a non-issue. It happens so rarely that it's really not an issue, but it does happen once in a while. So it's worth mentioning, I feel. But yeah, that's about it. I mean, as far as downsides to it, other than cost, I really see none. I think a lot of people try to find, bad in it. It's because they don't want to pay the price to get into it. But I've never seen someone who got like red dots that's really wanted to go back, because again, they work, for what you need them for. Iron sights are still a viable thing. That's why I wouldn't say like get rid of your iron sights on the gun and just have an RMR. But I'm saying if you want to be more accurate at distance, if you have poor eyesight, or again you want to be able to remain threat focused throughout, an RMR is definitely a viable option.
Yeah, I'm going to just throw two more points in here. And one thing too that you'll see with people the first time shooting their RMR gun is they'll be like the dot's moving all over. That means that your iron sights are doing the same exact thing too. This just gives you more feedback as a shooter as to what's going on. Like when I pull a shot, I see my dot do it. I know I pulled that shot immediately. Again, too, with iron sights, they're just wider, they're thicker. You're looking through again different sight planes. It's not as easy to get that feedback as it is with the red dot. So that's kind of a really big point. The second would be would have been last month or the month before. Sage Dynamics, he did, I think over the past 2 or 3 years in his active shooter class, he tracked shooters that had experience with red dots, no experience with red dots on his force on force guns. And he built up this whole, it's like 64 pages or something like that of data on red dots and why they're amazing. And he goes into like what happens to your eyesight during stress. That's another big factor. Again, read his paper because it's way smarter than I am. Aaron Cowan likes, big scientific words, and he's super smart. So read his paper.
Pretty locked on too. He got some good information.
But watch what happens to your eyesight. It's called like ANS or SNS or something like that. Maybe it's both of what stress and what happens to your eyes and how they kind of focus in on stuff. The red dot helps you on that aspect. There's a ton of information, but if you look at his white paper, he actually then scores the hit zones for the hits during his force on force classes. And guess what? Lo and behold, not only did red dots shoot better, they actually shot way better when it comes to actual critical neutralizing hits as well. And that varied from shooters that have never shot a red dot before to people that have ran a red dot before versus irons. So people with the red dots had better accuracy and better critical hits than irons in force on force scenarios, which again is kind of the closest we can get of real life data. So there's a lot to this. I don't think it's something you should just jump into. Do your research, look into it. There's a ton of obviously this video here. Aaron Cowan has a bunch of videos on it. There's a bunch of other stuff out there. Do your research on it. Hey, if it works for you, awesome. If you're not interested, roll on. Hey,
Yeah.
people have been killing people with iron sights for a long time. There's still amazing shooters out there with iron sights doing a good job. So you know what? If it's not for you, it's not for you. Rock on.
Oh man, that was funny. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, man. You know what I'm saying? And I know from training and from combat and all that, when you have iron sights, I mean, you got the rear, you got the front, you got to match all this. When you got a red dot, is if you present that firearm the proper way, is banned. It's right there. You know, I mean, it reduced that you could acquire the target very very quick. At least you do that. I do that with the rifle. So I'm sure it got to be the same with the pistol if you put your training. And if you spend money, you know what? I've been telling this for a long time. You don't need 600 pistols. You know what I'm saying? You don't need
Jesse has
600
one.
pistols.
Jesse has
Oh,
one.
I know. But
He has one.
I
That's
mean,
not a joke.
we could. I remember when I was talking to you a while ago, and you told me I'm going to start selling my guns so I could do some training. Remember that conversation?
Yeah.
But let's not go into that. But all right, what about any other companies out there? I know some of you guys mentioned Trigicon. What about Vortex? I'm a fan of Vortex. Do they have any pistol size that you guys recommend? Oh, not really.
Have we seen one make it through a class yet, Jesse?
You know, that's the thing, right? Like Vortex has an awesome warranty and they're definitely going to replace it for you, but you're going to use that warranty way more than you would. Again, the only two that I've heard reasonable is the Delta Point, right? It's got a larger viewing window. I've heard reasonable things about the reliability on it. But, you know, again, I don't know guys that have run them hard enough to where I would say, you know, definitely go for that. It's got an easier battery change, right? The battery's on the top. It's got some appealing features to it, but they just haven't been combat proven like the Trigicon RMR, man. The RMR right now is just the one to beat. There's really nothing out there that holds the ruggedness and holds up to, abuse like the RMR. So,
Mhm.
And what we're talking about with this too is could you get a good Vortex? Absolutely. What we're talking about is we're going to a low light shoot house class this weekend, a force on force 2 weeks after, 2 force on force classes the next 3 weeks. It's more of when we start getting this gear into classes where over 2 or 3 days we're putting anywhere from 500 to 1,000 rounds. That's a lot of stress to put onto a gun. So unfortunately, yeah, I think we've seen I want to say we've seen 2 of the Vortex ones in classes, and I don't think either of them made it through the class. So
That's disappointing, man.
kind of one of those things too. If you're spending all this money, I don't know what the Vortexes go for. Between $200 ish, somewhere in there, plus or minus 50. If you're going to go to all this trouble to mill and do all this stuff, man, just save up a little while longer, and then just dump the money on an RMR. If you're going to go that far into it, just go all the way. If that takes you a couple more months or a year or so to save up, for me, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Right. And I should say, you know, I'm looking at this from a carry aspect too, right? Or a duty aspect. Like, you know, if this is your range gun, you know, something like a Vortex or whatever, if this is your competition gun, something like that would be fine. You know, again, we're talking about like hard use, something that's going to stand up to the rigors of, again, everyday carry or duty use for guys that are going to use it on. Because again, you're seeing a lot of law enforcement agencies, and that's why Aaron Cowan did the paper, his white paper, is because it's helping officers get better hit percentage, right? And anytime that we can get guys more deadly out there or making better hits on bad guys, that's what we want, right? We don't want rounds going astray. So, again, I think if you're starting out, right, you know, if you want to delve into this, the best way to do it is honestly to mill the slide. Like I said, I know it's appealing to go with an MOS or the Baylor mount to try out because you're not making permanent modifications to the gun. The problem is, again, longevity out of that optic. It's just, and you're talking about sight placement, you know, again, like some of those mounted up higher, they sit higher. You've got to get different size iron sights, things like that. You know, same thing is going to happen with screws and hardware. That's a big surprise to a lot of people. They buy the RMR, they have the MOS, but the screws that come with the RMR don't fit the MOS. And again, it's your extractor channel or whatever right there is underneath one of the sides of the screws. So if the company doing it doesn't mill that right, you know, they can mill down into there. You know, again, I don't want to give away our sponsor ATI's all his secrets of what he does. You know, if you're interested, get a hold of him and he'll definitely tell you why he goes above and beyond. But, you know, that's why the red dots last as long as they do on these pistols. And like I said, you're talking 20,000 rounds. Like, to me, that's significant, right? That's good enough for the value that I get out of using the red dot, to be able to, again, go a couple weeks without it, replace it. That's where having a backup gun or something like that really comes in handy. But yeah, man, you know, again, I dig the red dot. I've got kind of vision issue. I had a light bulb when I was a kid, kind of sliced my eye, which made, you know, one of my dominant eye a little blurrier than my non-dominant eye. With the red dot having both eyes open, that corrects itself. Again, I'm more confident in my shooting ability because I just trust that dot, right? And the minute that dot lies to me, I can tell. You know, again, shot to shot recovery, so I can tell when my grip and everything is perfect because that dot just doesn't move. It literally sits in that window and just dips just little bits. And like Nick said, the minute I shank around, I see that thing dive out of that window screen, and it's like, oh man, you know, that one's left, and I can check my work well faster than I could ever on iron sights. And I did a lot of like what I call like guessing, right, with iron sights, like especially at distance, you know, and this is where it really applies, like 25, 30 yards, you know, and but to get good with all the fundamentals, right, that's where you start to see flaws is at distance. So I'd get up with iron sights and I would do this back and forth, like, okay, you know, am I level rear? Is my front sight where I want it to be? Do I have the proper hold for this distance? And and while I'm trying to get good trigger pressure and good grip, right? And then break that shot. And by the time I was done, it was like exhausting. And now it's like I can just put it up, the dot's there, ping, you know, all the way back at 100, no problem on like a C-zone steel. So it's just way more, it's easier for me. Like I said, I almost feel like it's like cheating a lot of the time, but then I'll put it in the hands of a new shooter and they're like, you know, it doesn't work for me. But again, we start to break down those fundamentals to what they're doing wrong, and immediately they're going quicker with better results than the guys that are strictly on iron sights.
And anything else you guys want to share? Like I say, I was expecting like 4 to 5 minutes on this, and I learned a lot. I really did. I appreciate that because I've been wanting to get into red points on my pistol and the Glock 17. And I mean, it's a lot. Like Jesse has given a ton of information, man.
Yeah, he's went in it deep before me. So try it out. I mean, here's the beautiful thing too. If you go to a training class, there's probably at least going to be one dude there. Ask to borrow it. I don't know. Again, that's the beautiful thing about training classes. Everybody lets you borrow stuff, man. That was Jesse's first intro into a red dot pistol. Borrowed one of Steve Fisher's guns. So here's the great kind of maybe end story is, I want to say last year it was a terrible cold class at a essential handgun class with Steve Fisher of Sentinel Concepts. Jesse borrowed his gun, took top shooter. So
wow,
there you go.
Yeah, that was enough proof for me right there, right? It was like, dang, obviously I'd shot class with Steve before, and I definitely didn't do near as well as I did. And yeah, I was just on point that day, and it was like, okay, this is a viable option. Let me look into this. And yeah, man, the rest is history. Last thing I'll say is, yeah, you know, if I didn't cover some of the questions here, right, like you think of another question, believe me, I've asked them all before I delve into this red dot market. Or again, I know a lot of people in this industry. You can hit me up at jesse@practicallytactical.com, and I'll answer any of those questions for you.
Stick around. We got a lot of videos coming out. Definitely stick around. I'll see you guys in the next one. And as always, God is in control.